Welcome to the Grace Space, a transmission for the sovereign soul. Certain lineages of consciousness lost their way, lost their direct connection to the generative field. And when that happens, you've got to find an external source of energy. So you become a consumer rather than a generator. You extract from other beings, from planets, from emotional fields, from life force, because you have no other way to sustain yourself. And this is not a moral judgment, it's a description of a state, and we've all been there. It's a state of profound disconnection and suffering. But the effect of it on everything around it is extractive. And it has been the dominant force on this planet for an extraordinarily long time. Not just this planet, not just our galaxy, a number of galaxies. Every piece of information that comes at you now, every channeler, every whistleblower, every disclosure narrative, every spiritual teacher, every symbol, every piece of information can be run through that single filter of that question. Hey everyone, real quick before we begin, if this content matters to you, you're warmly invited to subscribe to this channel, to like this video, to leave a comment, or all three. I read all the comments, and your engagement is really important because when you engage, it tells YouTube to push this content out to more people who would find value in it. Now that I understand this, I engage a lot more with the channels that are important to me because I know it really matters. Thanks for listening. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Grace Space. This is my last official episode of this season. I think it's time for me to take a step back or two. It's been a pretty epic journey, and before I do anything else, I just want to pause and feel into what this season has actually been. I mean, we started in January, and I called it the bridge, the idea that 2026 would mark, and here we are halfway through it, a moment of discontinuity where what was hidden begins to move into lived experience for more and more people. And I think we're seeing that is really playing out. And I don't know, I mean, well, I guess I didn't know when I started what exactly that would look like across 26 episodes, trying to keep my finger on the pulse there and build a bridge for those who are awakening now. But looking back, I guess I can see the shape of it. We started with belonging, the human need for real community, which is more important than ever. And so many people are flocking to this idea of conscious community. And I had a great conversation with Cynthia Tina about that. And then we went into the matrix within, how the control structures that we were born into and that we see outside of us are mirrored in our own psyche. We had amazing couple of conversations with Tony Rodriguez, whose testimony about the secret space programs and cloning and off-planet, his personal off-planet experience on Ceres is among the most challenging and important in the whole disclosure landscape. And we also explored the body as its own intelligence, plasma and urotherapy and the idea that the most sophisticated healing technology available to us is already within us. And we sat with amazing people like Katie Bishop and Rebecca Barron and Poppy Joy and Renata Duma and so many others that I haven't named, with this central teaching that the human heart, what makes us really human, our source connection, can't be hacked. And we looked at fairy tales as encoded ancestral memory of the fall that we've experienced on our planet multiple times. And more recently, we traveled with Indigo Angel into bloodline healing and the cosmic war for Earth. And most recently, Jesse Wilson brought us back to the most intimate territory of all, the mask that we wear and what becomes possible when we're ready to take it off. And what better time than the apocalypse, the unveiling, the revelation of truth. We're each individually responsible for our own apocalypse, I guess you could say. And I use that in the most positive and true sense of the word, which is the unveiling. Hope it's not too noisy out there. It's early in the morning, and and so there's some lawn work happening. Anyway, I feel like this season has been a spiral from the personal to the systemic to the cosmic, and then back again to the deeply embodied and human. Um, because that's what we're learning to grapple with, that we are these universal fractals, and we contain the universe. And so our journey is not just our individual personal journey, it is affecting the entire cosmos. And really, that is amazing. So for this finale, I want to do something that I feel is genuinely needed, not just as a conclusion, but as a gift to anyone who's finding their way into this material for the first time, or who maybe who's been in it for years and is just feeling the overwhelm, as I know I do at moments. I want to come back to basics. And I talked about this on Instagram the other day, and I think it's really worth reiterating and going a little bit deeper into some of the areas that I covered on that day. So we're all swimming in this information environment. By the time you've spent a season like this one, going from cloning programs to plasma intelligence to fairy tale cosmology to starseed bloodlines, I mean, you start to feel what I think many of you feel when you engage with the broader disclosure and awakening community, and that is the sheer scale of it. So many storylines, so many narratives, and so many lenses through which it can be viewed. There's the galactic influencer world, the channeling world, the truther patriot world, the secret space program whistleblower world, the Galactic Federation world, the white hat military intel world, the official, in quotes, government disclosure side of things, the AI generated channels proliferating content faster than anybody can track, the influencers parroting each other, the psyops layered through all of it. And for someone just waking up, just imagine, I mean, just beginning to feel that the reality that we were handed does not add up. All of this lands without a real framework to hold it. I mean, it is the Wild West. We're all just trying to suss out what is real. What is for us, really for us, rather than against us in some manipulative way? I call it the astral circus. I call it the insanity of the world stage. It's all kind of, mashed together. And I want to be clear, I don't say any of that to dismiss any of it wholesale, because some of it is genuine and important. I'm just saying that to name the environment and the feeling of it honestly, because the confusion is not accidental. An overwhelmed mind reaches for authority. An overwhelmed mind often disconnects and goes into dissociation or distraction or denial, right? This is it's like a safety, a protection, right? So and when we're in that state, we become very much more easily programmable, and there's definitely no shortage of authorities, human and otherwise, who are ready to step into that space of authority for people who are floundering, right? So the thing is, we have almost no reliable maps, okay? It's the thing I keep coming back to. And we've got to state it clearly, even though it's uncomfortable, because the fact is we have almost no reliable information about our true history. History has been rewritten to suit the agendas of control. And I'm not just talking about galactic history, though that's an even deeper well of unknowing. I mean, I'm talking about our history here on Earth and what we've been told about the arc of human civilization, where it began, who shaped it, what forces have been operating behind what we see. It's the curated version. It's what we were told, and it partial at best, deliberately distorted at worst. The Lost Context episode that I did earlier this season touched on this, and so if you're not really sure what I'm talking about, that would be a good one to go back and listen to. You cannot understand a multidimensional reality through a two-dimensional map. And yet, that is what most of us have been given, flat maps of a spherical, layered, multidimensional, deeply strange reality. We have been kept away from so much. So, when someone presents you with a complete cosmological framework, like here are the Cedar races, here are the timelines, here are the stargates, here is exactly what's happening dimensionally through 2040. Well, you know, as much as I would also love to have something to hold on to that I know for sure is real and solid, part of you still has to hold that lightly, not to dismiss it, just hold it lightly because the honest position is that we don't fully know and the timelines are changing all the time. And anyone claiming total certainty about the details of galactic history, oh, that should give us pause. What we can know, what I think is increasingly available to us as the veil thins, is orientation, direction, intention, the felt sense of what is source aligned and what is not. That's the simple way to look at it. That is available. The complete map is not yet available. So, at the heart of what I want to talk about, as we're sort of looking back over the whole season, is something that I've touched on in various lives, but I want to take it more slowly here, and it's understanding the full spectrum of looshing. Okay, this is a real thing, and I want to spend some real time on what I think is one of the most important and least understood concepts of this whole landscape, right? Looshing. Now, most people, if they even know what that word means, they think of suffering. They think of fear and trauma and pain and the harvesting of negative, dense emotional energy, and that is real and it is significant. And we spoke to survivors this season who have direct personal experience with the worst extremities of that kind of harvesting of energy, right? And if I didn't say looshing, that word is used to describe the harvesting of various emotional energies. Okay, and the entire architecture, if you look at it, of the news cycle and the financial system and our financial anxiety and our social media environments and our political theater, all of that is built to keep us in a low grade state of threat and reaction. We're talking about the nervous system here, right? And the nervous system is like, sets the tone, the energetic signature, the pulse, if you will, of your energy field, right? So a nervous system that's in chronic activation produces exactly what the system needs: fear, anxiety, shame, guilt, rage, grief. These are all highly harvestable frequencies, and the system is structured to keep them running. That's not accidental. That is the design. But looshing is not only about negative emotions, and this is where I think many people, including people who are deep in the awakening community, have genuine blind spots. And before I go further into this, I want to introduce a distinction that I think is one of the most practically useful things that I can offer in this episode, because once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. And that is the distinction between stimulation and aliveness, real aliveness. We live in a world that is almost completely oriented around stimulation. Think about it, right? We've got chemically enhanced food that's engineered to, give you a buzz and override your satiety, signals, the feeling of being full. We've got caffeine, we've got alcohol, we've got sexual imagery on billboards and practically like soft porn on Netflix now. I mean, I'm shocked when I see what is being shown on, just these regular streaming channels now. It's extreme. And we've got that in advertising too, and in the ambient visual field of daily life. Then we've got the outrage cycle on social media, which is designed algorithmically to keep your nervous system activated. We have the emotional roller coaster of relationships that are running on drama instead of genuine intimacy. And even in spiritual communities, this overemphasis on pineal activation, and I've talked about, my view of that. And through the high of powerful ceremonies and the rush of very intense group spiritual experiences, those are all forms of stimulation because we are addicted to stimulation. We want to get high, right? We've been steered in that direction, and we have confused it with a genuine feeling of aliveness. They are not the same thing. Stimulation, whether it is an external or internal activation, it spikes your nervous system, narrows your attention, stimulates the emotional body. It can feel extraordinary in the moment, but it's not necessarily coming from the source of our aliveness, right? We can light up our energy centers like a pinball machine, all right? Because, those energy centers are also there and can be loosed. They are ways of diverting the flow of the holistic flow of energy that is our toroidal field, right? So, that little ladder of chakras can also be used for looshing. And in my view of things, it's not original to our design. So, when we have experienced stimulation, usually afterwards, what we experience is some kind of crash or flatness, and that makes you want to, reach for the next hit. Everybody knows that feeling. Now, aliveness is different. Aliveness is what you feel when you're in genuine connection with the source field within you. It doesn't spike, doesn't crash. It is a quality of presence that is quiet and steady and generative and self-sustaining. And it feels like coming home rather than being taken on a ride, a wild ride somewhere. Look, I love wild rides too. I mean, I used to love going to the amusement parks and going on the roller coasters and stuff like that. But that's definitely a stimulation experience, right? Aliveness is expansive, and it doesn't require anything external to maintain it. It doesn't require any like, you know, um, psychic gymnastics either, right? It's just a natural connection to source. It's more of you. It's more of your own true self, allowing more of you to come through and to fill you with you, because source is you. You are within the source, the source is within you, and we are full universal fractals of the source. So, Rebecca Barron, in one of the most important conversations of this entire season, described the heart as the teacher and the mind as the student. That's how she teaches. And what she's pointing at through her own extraordinary and and harrowing experience of having her heart connection deliberately targeted for suppression from childhood is exactly this. The heart, in genuine coherence, is the source of aliveness, right? It is the portal to source. It is our direct connection, right? Not the mind, not the nervous system's response to stimulation, right? The heart. And Rebecca's story is really worth sitting with in this context because she was enrolled from childhood in trauma-based mind control programs, the explicit goal of which was to separate her from her heart. And anybody who has suffered in those programs, who was victimized by those programs, who has survived those programs, and they rightfully call themselves survivors, not victims, they will tell you that that is the explicit goal of those programs, to separate you from your heart, to break your heart to break your connection with your heart so that you can be then manipulated, right? It's to suppress and fragment the connection to the source field so that the human gifts can be harvested and used by others, right? And what was being extracted from Rebecca was, precisely what we're talking about here. This is the case with all the survivors, right? The generative field of the human being in genuine connection with source. That is what is valuable. That is what is being taken, redirected. Okay. And what the stimulation economy does, if we can call it that, more subtly, but on a mass scale, is the same thing, keeping people activated, keeping them reaching outward for the next hit of stimulation. And the genuine inner aliveness, the quiet, regenerative, self sustaining field of the sovereign human heart never gets a chance to develop, to stabilize, to be experienced, right? Because it is much more subtle. Now, because a being who knows what aliveness is and what it actually feels like is very difficult to loosh. So the first question to begin asking ourselves about everything is not, does this feel good? Right? It's does it stimulate me or does it make me more alive? Because those are different feelings and the answers will sometimes surprise you. Now, looshing is not only about negative emotions, as I was saying, right? It's not only about the stimulation trap, it's also something that happens through what we call worship. And this is something, and I'm sorry to offend people who are religious and for whom worship is a major component, but we've got to see this for what it is, all right? Think about it for a moment. The energy of devotion, of praise, of glorification, of bowing before an external concept of God that is separate from you and greater than you, right? In the belief system is an enormous energetic offering when you subjugate yourself, right? And most of our religious traditions, if not all, have been structured precisely to redirect that offering away from, how should we say, a natural feeling of gratitude and joy in being alive because the source is within you, and toward an intermediary construct. And that is what I call a sacrifice implant, whether that actually exists or not. That's how I think of it. It is woven into the architecture of organized religion at the deepest level. And you are taught that your devotion, your reverence, your most luminous spiritual energy must be poured outward toward an icon or a building or a name or a black cube or, a being positioned above you somehow in a hierarchy. And in doing so, you're giving away your power, your light, your life force to something else. This is really important to realize. We're already being harvested and loosed for everything that we have, which is our source connection. And that energy, that life force is powering this entire world and beyond. Yeah. Who doesn't get to benefit from it? Us. Even in New Age spiritual communities, this pattern is present in subtler forms, maybe certain symbols that are presented as sacred, certain geometric forms, certain sigils, certain activation codes, maybe like are distortions of organic source geometry, and they're designed to function as siphons as well, right? You engage with them in a state of openness, in a state of reverence, and you believe that you're connecting with something higher and your energy flows out. And even what we call bliss can be loosed, that ecstatic spiritual high, the rush that you get from a powerful ceremony or concert, group activation. It can feel like a profound connection when it's happening, but it can also be functioning as a harvesting event, right? This is because the energy surges and the field opens and right, something feeds off of that. It doesn't mean that every ecstatic spiritual experience is a loosh harvest, but it does give you a question to carry, which is how do I feel afterward, right? Not during, but after. Real connection to source fills you in a way that grounds you, right? And it makes you feel more whole, more present, more like yourself. And looshing, even when it feels beautiful in the moment, um, leaves a particular kind of depletion in its wake. It leaves a debt, okay? And connect that in your mind with the debt slavery that we all live in, okay? Because the principle is the same. There's a subtle emptiness, there's a sense of having given something away, okay? And we need to learn to feel the difference. And that discernment alone is already protective in some sense, right? Now, I want to connect this to the money architecture, right? Because this is the looshing made literal, all right? And you know, even in the awakening community, we've been talking about looshing as an energetic phenomenon, but it also has a material expression that most people interact with every single day without understanding what they're participating in exactly. Okay, and that is obviously I'm talking about money here. Many people are now aware, at least in the broad strokes, that we live in a debt-based fiat currency system, okay? That the money is created out of nothing, okay? And it is lent at interest and it creates a structural enslavement, right? Because we could never collectively pay off a debt that's designed to always exceed the money supply. I mean, they just inflate the money supply and devalue the currency. And that, we're at the breaking point with that right now. And most people don't realize that the Federal Reserve is not a government institution in the sense that most people assume that's a private banking cartel. And but very few people have taken this one level deeper into the actual energy architecture underneath it. And the name's worth sitting with, the Federal Reserve, federal, as in federation, not the US federal government, the Federation, the same overarching control structure of which the Galactic Federation and other so-called federations are but regional arms. Entities that have historically managed the extraction operations on this planet as one farm among many in a much larger system. What's actually being harvested through the money system is not just your labor in the conventional economic sense, it is your life force. Your life force, your productive and creative capacity, your time, which is not an abstraction, but a direct expression of your living energy on this plane. And the architecture in its simplest form is that we were born into a system that from the moment of our birth registration created a legal fiction, a corporate entity in your name in all capital letters that functions as a bond. And your future labor, your future productivity, your future life force was effectively securitized, traded, and used as collateral for a debt that you never agreed to and you never saw. All right, now this is a very, very, very deep topic, and I hope to have some people next season who can go into this more deeply. But we need to understand that the money that circulates in the system is not neutral. It is a representation of extracted human life force created out of our collective Ethereum, right? What comes to us from source. Yeah. Hoarded by the few and recirculated back to us at interest in quantities deliberately kept insufficient so that the many must perpetually slave to stay alive, right? Diminishing returns, we could call it. And that's why, financial stress is not a bug in the system. It's not something they're trying to solve. It is the system. It's a population in chronic financial scarcity is a population in chronic sympathetic nervous system activation. right? Which is, as we've established, is a population that's continually being loosed, and the stress of not having enough money, and that's not separate from the energy harvesting operation. It is one of its primary delivery mechanisms. So we've been farmed here on this planet through financial systems, through fuel dependence, through unnatural Stargate use. That is not metaphor. That is a description of the actual infrastructure. And when you understand this, and when you see that the financial system is not a neutral economic mechanism, but an energy harvesting architecture, it reframes everything because it fits into the, you're like, oh, of course, right? The debt that you carry, the anxiety about making ends meet, the sense that no matter how hard you work, that you can never quite get ahead, and these are not personal failures, although we often take them as such. They are the intended output of a system that is designed to keep you exactly in that state. Now, we can free ourselves, right? This is not to say that we're helpless within it, but we cannot navigate something that we don't understand. And understanding this clearly without flinching is the beginning of withdrawing consent from it as consciously as you can, while living in the reality of it with self-compassion as we figure this out. And we will, and we are. And this is the other thing that Rebecca Barron understood. If I think back to our conversation from her own experience of being used as a harvesting vessel from childhood, right? The moment that you understand what is actually happening, you can begin to consciously return your energy to you, right? You can begin to redirect your energy, your devotion, your life force back into your own sovereign field, back into the genuine source connection, back into the aliveness rather than the stimulation, right? That is the exit. It's not a dramatic overthrow. It is a quiet, sustained, daily reorientation, for which we need awareness of where your energy actually goes. Now, this season, we have heard some remarkable testimony about what humans actually are and what has been done to us. Tony Rodriguez described programs that he was part of from childhood that used human beings as resources, right? Traded. He was owned by a corporation, cloned, owned by a corporation, off planet. He also said that everything off planet, it's all corporations out there too, in the world of extraction, right? Beings subjected to memory wipes, subjected to forced timeline experiences, to conditions that would seem unimaginable if we hadn't slowly over many years developed the capacity to hear it. And Indigo Angel also spoke about bloodline trauma, about the long war for the earth, about what it means to carry this galactic memory into a human body in this particular moment, because we're all coming from other places to be here for this convergence. And underneath all of that, you know, it is underneath the humans are a plague narrative, right? That's been running through environmental discourse, through transhumanist philosophy, through certain strands of ET messaging. There's a question that I want to pose very directly. Let me get it right first. Why would anybody spend so much effort suppressing something that wasn't extraordinarily valuable, right? We are extraordinarily valuable. We have been subjected to genetic interference, memory wipes, reincarnation traps, the deliberate dumbing down through food and water and education and religion and media, EMF environments, toxicity bombarding us from every possible vector, financial stress, etheric implants, timeline manipulations, all of that sustained multi-generational, multi-dimensional effort just to keep one species from remembering what it is. Well, you don't do that to something weak. You do that to something whose power, even fractionally expressed, is incredibly significant. It keeps the whole economy running. And I'm not just talking about on our planet. The sickness that we see in human civilization, the cruelty, the exploitation, the self-destruction, this is not our original nature. I say it over and over again. It is the wound. It is what happens when a being of extraordinary light is traumatized, hybridized, fragmented, and forced to carry the imprint of its oppressors across many lifetimes. Our original nature is humane and it is immensely powerful. And that power is what is being reclaimed by us right now, right? Through every single person who's spoken here this season, through conversations like the ones that you're having, through the simple acts of remembering and reclaiming. That is us getting our power back. And I want to gently acknowledge something here because it's territory that's worth glancing at, even if we don't go deep into it this time. But when we look at the full picture, it becomes clear that not everyone incarnate on this planet at this time is here with the same origin or the same capacity for source connection. There are those who are fully human in the original sense, and there are others who are not. We live among things that, I mean, even like 5 years ago to me would have sounded like complete and total science fiction. Cloned vessels and bio robots and deeply hybridized lineages that are, operating without the full spectrum of human soul essence and heart connection. And I'm not saying this to create division or fear. We also share the planet with amazing beings. We share the planet with inner earth beings of extremely noble and great lineage. I mean noble in the highest sense of the word, very advanced beings. We share the planet with beings like that as well, right? But I'm saying this because, understanding the landscape helps us to stop being so confused when certain beings simply don't respond the way that we would expect a human to respond, right? Empathy is our strength. Empathy is one of the hallmarks of being human. But when we project our own conscience and consciousness onto every entity, um, it, we we make ourselves vulnerable, right? That's a kind of blindness. We have to realize that not everybody is like us. And the people who have been running things here, I say people, the beings who've been running things here, as Kathy O'Brien says, are not like us, and they do not like us. This is a reality that we've got to face. So, I want to distill this whole framework cleanly into a core binary, okay? Um, After 26 episodes, after all of this territory and cloning programs and plasma intelligence and fairy tale cosmology and heart coherence and bloodline healing, and the thing that I want to leave you with as we close this season is it's actually simple. It's not easy, but it is simple when you realize that there are fundamentally two orientations of consciousness. One is connected to source, right? When a consciousness is in genuine relationship with the generative, the infinite generative field of life, it creates, it gives, it circulates, it has intrinsic supply. It does not need to extract from others to sustain itself, right? So that is source aligned consciousness, right? If you're familiar with the law of one, some people refer to that as the law of one. The other consciousness is disconnected from source, and through some combination of trauma, accumulated choices, what various traditions call a fall, certain lineages of consciousness lost their way, lost their direct connection to the generative field. And when that happens, you've got to find an external source of energy. So you become a consumer rather than a generator. You extract from other beings, from planets, from emotional fields, from life force, because you have no other way to sustain yourself. And this is not a moral judgment, it's a description of a state, and we've all been there. It's a state of profound disconnection and suffering. The effect of it on everything around it is extractive, and it has been the dominant force on this planet for an extraordinarily long time. Not just this planet, not just our galaxy, a number of galaxies. Every piece of information that comes at you now, every channeler, every whistleblower, every disclosure narrative, every spiritual teacher, every symbol, every piece of information can be run through that single filter of that question. Does this seek the highest good for all beings everywhere? In other words, is it aligned to source? Or does it rely in some form on extraction? Okay, that's it. You don't need a complete map of galactic history to ask that question. You need your heart, you need your felt sense, you need the willingness to notice after the encounter, do you feel more whole or less? Now, I want to say something here that I feel strongly about because I see this confusion in spiritual communities constantly. Source aligned does not mean passive. It does not mean love and light with everyone, regardless of what they're doing. It does not mean dissolving your boundaries in the name of unity. Okay, that's hive mind, right? And this is where it gets so tricky, right? Like when we say oneness, does that mean hive mind where you don't have any will of your own anymore, where you have, capitulated to the machine, or does it mean, aligned with the law of one, aligned with source, right? For the highest good of all. So it doesn't mean, being source aligned doesn't mean staying silent when you see distortion, because naming it might seem unloving. That is spiritual bypass. And it is, I would argue, one of the most sophisticated tools of the control system, because it takes the genuine spiritual impulse toward love, toward compassion, and the desire to understand, and weaponizes it against our discernment, right? We've got to name the things that we see. Naming is not judgment, it's clarity. And clarity is love in a useful form, right? Strong boundaries are not a failure of compassion, quite the contrary. They're an expression of self-respect and of self-honoring and of genuine care for the integrity of the field, right? For everyone. When you withdraw your energy from something extractive, when you say, I see what you are, I call you out, I do not consent to this, that is sovereignty in practice. That is the most source aligned thing that you can do in the moment. So we are still in the land of the relative here. We're still living inside a loosh-based economy for now. The dominant systems are still structured to discourage source alignment, to make it inconvenient at the very least, to sometimes make it feel impossible. So, this is not about perfection or some impossible standard of purity. It is about intention and direction. You can state your intention to live source aligned. You can hold your boundaries. You can make the clearest choices that are available to you in the environment that you're actually in, and extend yourself the grace that you would extend to anyone who's doing their best under heavy interference, because we are all of us under heavy interference and have been for a very, very long time. The heart is our compass always, always. This is what we can return to, right? Everything that I've said today ultimately comes back to one thing. We have this discernment instrument that no psyop can fully compromise, and no amount of information overload can silence if we will learn to listen to it and trust it. That's our body, our heart field, our felt sense of what is true. This season, we've heard, from multiple people. We've heard this truth coming from many directions. Katie Bishop gave us the teaching that the human heart can't be hacked. Rebecca Barron, brought the principle that the heart is the teacher, the mind is the student. And that teaching is made all the more potent by the fact that her heart connection was systematically targeted for suppression precisely because of how powerful it is. Poppy Joy spoke about organic intelligence, the body's own knowing that predates and outlasts any system of control. Same with Fiona Gardner, same with Megan McDonald. When we had our conversations about the intelligence of the body, what all of these teachers are pointing to is the same thing. Before you analyze, before you agree or disagree, before you run something through your intellectual filters, feel it. Feel it. Does something in you relax into recognition or tighten against intrusion when you experience or are confronted with something? Does it fill you with a sense of rightness, or does it quietly empty you? we don't have to be perfect at this. None of us are. Our somatic intelligence has been interfered with as well through trauma, through EMF environments, through everything that we've discussed this season. But it is there, it is yours. And every time you use it, you strengthen it. So this is not spiritual practice separate from everyday life. It is daily life. Every conversation, every piece of content, every teacher, every decision, you can run it through your heart first. Let the mind do the work second. So that sequence, heart first, mind second, is actually the reversal of everything the control system has tried to install in us. And it's the most radical act of sovereignty available to any of us right now. So as I close this season, I want to say something directly to you, to whoever has been with me through these 26 episodes, or if you're hearing this as a first point of contact, I'm also speaking with you. This work is not comfortable. Naming what is real about the systems we've inherited, about what's been done to this planet, to the human race, about the full spectrum of what we are navigating right now requires the kind of courage that I don't think gets enough acknowledgement. It would be easier to look away. Most people do. The fact that you're here, that you're listening, that you're willing to hold all of this complexity without collapsing into either denial or despair, that is not nothing. That is actually a beautiful contribution to the field, to yourself, right? And to the collective awakening that is genuinely underway. It's happening. It is happening. We didn't see how bumpy it was going to be, but we couldn't know, right? That's part of it. So I'm going to take some time to regroup now, to integrate what this season has been, to feel into what the next season wants to be. I may show up if something, if there's something really cool that I want to share, but, and I'm still going to keep up with Instagram lives every week, but the landscape is changing really rapidly and I want to meet it with the clearest eyes that I can. So until then, come back to simplicity, come back to your heart. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to feel what's true. That's enough. And that has always been enough. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being awake. Thank you for the extraordinary privilege of your attention. See you soon. Meanwhile, walk in grace. You've been listening to The Grace Space. To amplify this field, you're welcome to like, subscribe, or share. Thank you.